Namo Amida Bu. I've shared with certain people, and I've shared on this channel, there was a guy who received a book from his brother on what the Buddha taught, who handed it to me when he was disinterested. And this forever changed my life, and I became a Buddhist. And I've talked about that former friend and how I had confronted him about how he would hop from one thing to the next. He was always in the latest New Age trend. I've also shared with you on this channel about how disillusioned I became with Christians and certain Buddhists in churches and temples when I would go. And it was like they were there, and I would ask, why are you there? You're a Christian and you seem to have no interest or take no heed in your life about what Jesus taught in the Gospels. Or even worse, you're a Buddhist in a temple, surrounded by images of the Buddha, listening to the Dharma message, and yet you don't take the Dharma seriously. It's all about gathering with your family or your friends or your culture or whatever. And I had asked someone this when I was a Catholic. This woman I knew at the Catholic Charismatic Center in Houston. And I said, I don't understand this. And she said, very few people take this stuff seriously. And she told me, for a lot of people, religion and going to church, or if you're a Buddhist, a temple, is just something to do. It's a way to pass the time. And getting back to that former friend of mine who would jump from one thing to the other, I confronted him once, as I've shared in a previous video, and I said, well, what's the deal, man? You never stick with anything for more than a couple of weeks, a month at the most, and then you're on to the next thing. I think at the time he was into something called soul retrieval. And I said, you always seem to think of yourself as this ascended master, and yet in order to be a master of anything, whether it's a profession or a spiritual technique or a form of meditation, you have to stick with it long enough to master it. And looking back at this, the hypocrites I've met in the Christian faith, in the churches, the hypocrites I knew, including my parents and my family growing up, and the hypocrites I've met in Buddhist temples, it's entertainment. It's like going to a yoga class for some of these people. And that's the way it was for that former friend I knew. I asked him once very bluntly, I said, you're always getting on a plane and going out to meet some person you've heard about online, and they're into crystals, or they're into, foretelling the future, or reading your horoscope and predicting your future, or giving you some kind of technique to bring you on the path of enlightenment. I asked him, why don't you ever use the stuff you've learned and just stay where you are to change the people around you? And of course, it pissed him off, and his response was, Dave, if you don't like it, you're free to go somewhere else. He was never able to look at himself. It was always a matter of narcissism. And for a lot of people, it's about bragging rights. Oh, yes, I attend Mass every Sunday. I go to church every Sunday. Oh, yes, I'm fill in the blank on what culture or ethnicity you are, whether it's white or Asian or whatever. Yes, and I celebrate this by going to attend my temple, you know, fill in the blank. And then there are a very few people for whom spirituality and religion are not things to do to pass the time, like going to see a football game or a basketball game or watching a movie. It's a serious spiritual search. It's an endeavor to answer deep questions left unanswered that have plagued you all your life. It's an attempt to find the truth. For me, it's the latter. And for a lot of you tuning in to this channel to listen to what I'm saying, it's the latter. And I found out by going to churches and going to temples and whatnot, people like us are in the minority. We're not in the majority. People who take the spiritual search seriously, not only are they in the minority, but people like us don't really tend to do well in organized, established religious institutions, because these institutions tend to be businesses. They're set up to make a profit. They're set up to make money. I found that out in the Catholic Church. I found that out in many Buddhist temples. The people who are financially able to contribute the most money get treated with the most respect. Poor paupers like myself, who are there struggling to survive in their financial and personal life, who are trying to find peace and enlightenment, they're kind of like a stray dog that's wandered into the church or the temple. And you get, at one time at a Catholic church, I was physically brushed aside, and I was treated very badly at most of the Buddhist temples I went to. Because these people's qualifications aren't the same as the Buddha's qualifications for Buddhists, or Jesus, what he allegedly said in the Gospels. They're there for friendship. They're there to find a date, a mate, any plethora of reasons other than seeking the truth and critically examining who they are, where they are in their spiritual journey. In other words, for a lot of people of all denominations, religion is nothing more than entertainment. It's like being a part of a club. I think that's why I like my Sangha, and it's an online Sangha, Amida Bu Temple, because we all seem to be a bunch of misfits who've gone through similar situations, and we're trying to find wisdom. And for me, that wisdom is simple faith in Amida Buddha. And knowing this, and this is not a video railing on people who see religion as entertainment, but it's kind of freeing for me because I've really judged people like this. Hell, I'll admit it, I've hated people like this. Because I've gone into their churches as a Buddhist, as a Christian, and I've gone into their temples as a Buddhist, expecting to be embraced. But the thing is, when you're there for entertainment purposes, you don't want someone asking troublesome, deep questions. Because you're there for the show. And that was a lot like that guy who very quickly rejected the book his brother sent him on what the Buddha taught. And I noticed the brother gave it to him after reading it. So neither one of them were really interested in anything in that book that changed my life. Excuse me. For me, it was never about doing the trendy thing. Even when I got into Wicca and the occult, it was about spiritually seeking, no matter what the cost. Even if the cost was death, I didn't care. For me, and I have to admit, maybe that's why I've always had a gross intolerance of people who are very wishy-washy in their faith as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists. And I've disowned a couple of friends. I've cut myself off from a couple of former friends who would talk Jodo Shinshu one minute and then vacillate into something totally different the next. My Shinjin is for life. It's not going to change. That moment I found what I was looking for, it clicked, and that will never go away. But maybe I need to understand that for a lot, if not for most people, and I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else, I'm not better than anyone else, I'm just saved by Amida Buddha. But I have to understand that for a lot of people, if not most people, who go to churches, who attend temples of whatever religious affiliation, it's not about a spiritual search. It's about hanging out with people you've known all your life. It's about wearing a label. It's about being a part of some kind of cultural identity, belonging to a group. And for some of us, it's not about any of those things. It's about connecting to that which is true and rejecting that which is false in our lives. Josho Adrian Sensei has made the comment that I've quoted many times, that this Saha realm is like a dream. And what we think is real in this Saha realm is like clouds floating across the sky. They're insubstantial and they change constantly. Only the Nimbutsu, the Pure Land, and Amitabha Buddha are real. Namo Amida Bu.